Hello, my name is Joe Galindo, and today in this presentation, I will be sharing with you some of the things that I've learned in the second half of the Java CIT 260 class, creating the game City variant. First, I'd like to go over some of the objectives. As you can see, I'm going to talk about the static variables versus non-static instance variables, another array versus array list or enum. Basic for each statement and an index that'll catch, propagate runtime errors from exceptions, character stream class versus byte stream class, and write character data to where the in the game there was a write character data to an external file. At the very end, I will also show a little bit of the game, parts of the game that I feel that I enjoy the most, and we'll share with you. First, what is a static class variable versus a non-static class or instance variable? For me, static class variable is a actual variable that can live across other instances inside of a class. In this sense, I wanted to use, for example, in the code for the game, the private static crop data. In the crop data, there's some information that we were able to use in other variables. In this case, here in this integer year, we were able to grab this static class variable and get the information to create other ones. Now, again, this variable lives across other instances inside of a class, and in some cases in other classes too. If we do the import of that class, we can also use that same variable across that other class. So that is what a static variable or static class variable is. Now, a non-static instance variable is only lives inside of an instance. For example, here we created some variables, some integers, where inside where this variable only lives inside the instance, and after the instance runs, it no longer could live onto another instance. We would have to create another variable, even if it is similar, and because it cannot live across the instances. So this is what I understand between the static class variable and a non-static instance variable. Next, an array list, or enum. From what I understand, an array list cannot have primitive characters, or can contain, I'm sorry, primitive characters. There's a part in the game where it shows the location of the character or the location of the player, and it requires these primitive characters. For example, an integer where it's not in a specific character. And what we use here is an actual integer, or actually a column in a row, to show where this player is on this on the map that has columns and rows. That's another thing that an array has, that it's multidimensional in its characters. So we can have an X and a Y, or in this case, a column and a row. You can't do that in an array list. An array list, you can't have these primitive characters. You have to have specific characters. In this sense, for example, in the animal list, or you see we have specific animals, the cows. We don't have numbers. We have the actual 12, and so on and so forth down the list. So that's the difference between an array and an array list, where we can actually use these primitive characters to show even this multi-dimensional characters in the array. Now, in enum, this is an actual list that can't grow, that could also use primitive characters, but it goes from the beginning to the end and it enumerates how it says in it. The next basic for each statement. First, the display array list is where we get the for each statement in the code. In the code, there's an actual private. Well, actually, it grabs from the animal array list and it shows the get name, and also, well, it goes and gets the name and the quantity and displays it. And that's the for each statement. Now, in the index, we have something similar. We do, again, a for statement. The only difference that I see, or why I chose this part of the actual code in the game, is because it actually makes an index. It actually creates columns with certain spaces, and it also uses these characters to show each part of the array in a certain location, and that's what I understood as an index versus just the for each statement. Next is an exception, throw, catch, and propagate, where we used these actually in instances where the player was asked to put in an actual value. It asks them, how many acres or how many bushels, and if the player puts in a character or value that is less than, then instead of the game crashing or getting hung up, we caught the exception through and propagated runtime error. In this sense, we tell them if they put less than 0 in the value, then I'll say, oh, sorry, that's a negative value. You can't do that. And if they put less than the amount if they know that they can't put less than a certain amount, and in this case it is less than or wanting to plant more than bushels of wheat owned, then it'd say, sorry, you can't do that because it's not feasible. And again, also when we created a file or a list and it requests a location, and if the location can't be written to, then it'll throw an exception and say, sorry, you can't save that file. Now, the character stream class versus the byte stream class. And in this, I understood that the character stream actually takes Unicode, 16-bit characters, for example, numbers, letters, certain characters, and it spits them out or puts them into a location. In this sense, I'm using the animal list, and it shows these characters in the 16-bit form. Now, the byte stream is actually byte for byte, and I believe it's 8-bit, and it's mainly to store information to the drive, or, for example, store the game, where it has a lot more other characters, but of course not the 16-bit, but the 8-bit. So again, character stream to actually put out Unicode 16-bit characters versus 8-bit characters when saving a game. Now, in the game, there is a part where the player is asked to save the game to a location on the hard drive. Now, the way it was supposed to work is the player puts in the location. It goes, the code says Okay, we'll do a file output stream to this location. Then it'll do an object out stream, and then it will actually create, or let's go back, create the object of the game, and then it will put it into this location. And if it doesn't or can't do it, then it'll put out the exception. But that's how it's supposed to work. And actually, after the user or the player puts in the location to save or save that file, then that's where it writes it to. Now I want to show a part of game, some of the game parts of the game. Actually, that I enjoy the most. First, let's start the game. Put my name in. Let's view the map. We got some mountains, some trees, some land, some water. Kind of like that idea. That's very nice. View the lists. I had a lot to do in this game, in this part of the game, so that's why I'm showing this. First, let's do the animals. Show the animals. Tools. You see the displays the tools and the provisions. And let's do the actual create these lists. Now, instructions were to ask the player where to put them. I actually wrote the code so it would work to actually save them in the location or the default location where the game is stored also. So let's go ahead and print the animal. That's 5 in the storehouse. And the tools, the provisions. Here you have the text file. If it opens, there we go. Provisions and the tools. Go back to the main menu. Now run the crop. The game was, there's some parts that didn't run correctly, but there are some parts that do. Let's see. Let's go back. Amen. Let's manage the crops. So it does go through each one of the methods. How many acres do we want to buy? That's 1. And then how many do we want to wish to sell? 1. Buy 1, sell 1. How many bushels of grain do you want to give to the people? Let's give them 1. Let's just go with 1. How many acres of let's do 1. And offerings, yeah, let's do 10. Here it shows, and I don't believe the methods are all work, and so it's not showing the correct numbers, but those are the numbers that are in the crop data, and so it's showing it. So these are some of the parts and I enjoyed the most in the game, and I'm sharing with you. I hope this presentation was informative, and it truly shows you what I've learned during this second part of the semester. Thank you for watching, and you have a nice one.